Good evening, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful day so far. I got a good one for you today. Krista Freeland's back in the news, giving her weekly update on our economy and giving us an update on the GST and $250 checks that they say they're going to give out to us. Now, it's a little bit late, so we already know that the NDP voted against the $250 check because apparently older people and people with disabilities won't get it, and we'll find out why in this video. So if you like this stuff, please leave a like and subscribe. With no further ado, let's get into it.
The Prime Minister on Thursday announced a tax break for all Canadians and the Working Canadians rebate. We've tabled draft legislation in Parliament to make that happen. The tax break means a GST exemption from December 14th to February 15th on essential items like prepared foods, like restaurant meals, like snacks, like clothing for kids and diapers, and toys. We know that we can't set prices at the checkout counter, but we can give Canadians a break and help them afford the things they need and save for the things that they want. Inflation is down, rates are coming down, but it's still hard for Canadians. And that's why now is the time to give Canadians a little bit of help. We also announced, the Prime Minister announced, the Working Canadians rebate. That will be a check for $250 paid in the spring. It will be paid out to Canadians who worked in 2023 and earned up to $150,000. It will help 18.7 million Canadians, and this is about helping middle-class Canadians, helping them with a little bit more money in their bank accounts to pay their bills and make other essential purchases. We're here really to urge all.
So the interesting thing that I question why the Liberals are doing this with the GST rebate. It's awesome that they're planning on giving this for 2 months. Like in a perfect world, this would be great, but they don't tell us how they're gonna pay for it. All this money goes to the government so they can pay for stuff. So either they're gonna have to print off money, which moneymaker go burr. We know the Liberals love to do that, or they're going to tax the heck out of us next year. So those two things I'm not particularly fond of. And now we know already that the Conservatives, when this was tabled, the Conservatives voted it down because, of course, they were doing the smart thing where they're like, we want to take off all of the carbon tax, not just this 2 months of taxes, which makes sense because, sure, the GST is going to be taken off for December and January, but once February comes around, GST tax and everything will come back. And that brings me back to the $250 check that they're going to give all of us. So why don't they give it to us during December? We could all use it for as a little present during the holidays. That's when we really need this stuff, is during the holidays. Sure, with not paying the GST, it helps during the holidays, helps with presents, helps with, well, trees and I guess with decorations. But in Alberta, let's say, that's only 5% off your purchase. And depending on if your province actually takes off the PSD, it's only going to be 5% off of yours. So that's not going to be too much money. And so it'll really depend on what your premier does.
All parliamentarians to join us, to join our MPs and our government in getting this legislation passed quickly so that Canadians can get the break that they need. And some more extremely good news. We have talked about the fact that this year we're going to pay the Canada Carbon Rebate for small businesses. These are going to be significant sums of money. A business with 10 employees in Ontario, for example, will be getting $4,000. A business with 499 employees in Alberta will be getting $294,000. So these are going to be significant payments to small businesses across the country. And we're here to announce that Canadian small businesses will be getting those payments ahead of schedule. The first wave of payments has been processed. Direct deposits should start showing up in businesses' bank accounts today, and they should arrive between today and December 3rd. Small businesses should check their My CRA account to see where their rebate is in terms of being processed. And I'd like to remind you, what we said we would do is deliver those direct deposits on December 15th, but we know how urgent it is for small businesses to get that help. And I am really glad that we're able to announce today that small businesses today will be starting to get their rebate. And Minister Valdez will have more to say about that. Now I turn it.
There's a couple of things I want to say. First off, I hope I heard this wrong, and I hope she said this wrong, is she says if you have 10 employees, then you'll get such and such back. Because a lot of small businesses don't have 10 employees. A lot of small businesses have up to 10 employees. So if what she's saying, that small businesses who only have 9 employees don't get anything back, I mean, that's a lot of small trades businesses that have to drive everywhere, have to waste a lot of gas, have to pay a lot of carbon taxes, and they'll have to pay that in full. They get nothing back. Hopefully I'm wrong. And also, as I said before, I went through all of the charts in a previous video that said how much they're going to get back, and the amount that you get back per employee is nothing compared to what you pay through gas, plus heating, plus your AC, plus pretty much everything that you pay for. Because the other stuff you don't think of is delivery services, as in if you have or a trades business, right? You always got to get your wire or your conduit or your lumber delivered to you, right? And the delivery service always charges you a carbon tax, or at least now they do. Stuff like that adds up. So what you're getting back does not equal what the government gives you. But let me know in the comments down below, because I don't have my own business where I have to pay a carbon tax. So if I'm wrong, I'll totally admit it. And while you're doing that, if you subscribe, that would be awesome as well. Anyways, let's continue to the question and answer period.
Good afternoon. For Minister Freeland, so in response to the announcement last week, we saw the premiers of PEI New Brunswick say they were very caught off guard by this, and it's going to impact their own provincial finances because it means because they're HST, they collect less provincial sales tax. It's not clear whether this change triggers this 1% rule, which requires automatic compensation. And Yves Giroux, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, said if that is in fact triggered, it's going to be a lot more expensive than you had said it was. So what's your response to this? Is the 1% triggered? Are you going to compensate HST provinces?
Thanks for the question. Our focus is very much on working collaboratively with provinces and territories across the country. And Jean-Yves and Dominic LeBlanc and I have been having a lot of conversations with premiers across the country. We think this is a really good measure for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. We think this is relief which will help Canadians, whichever province or territory they live in, and will also provide a boost to small businesses. Our hope is that as we talk more with premiers of provinces and territories, they will recognize that this is a good thing for the people who live in their province, and that they will join us in offering this relief to their people. And we've already seen Newfoundland and Labrador step up and do exactly that. So those are the conversations we're having. I really think that this is a measure that meets the needs of Canadians right now, that will help Canadians, that will help Canadian families, that will help our main streets across the country. And those are the discussions that we've been having. Jean-Yves, est-ce que vous voulez ajouter quelque chose?
The issue we're still having, though, with it is how are you going to pay for it as the feds? I mean, I'm down for less taxes, which I think is awesome. But I would like to know that something like this is not just randomly brought into play to buy votes, and actually you have it in the budget a way to pay for no GST for 2 months and for that $250 check.
Draft legislation just for these measures from last week, or are you going to package it with what you might have in the fall update, in which case it might be more problematic for other parties?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And as you know, we're a minority in Parliament. To pass any legislation, we need support from MPs from other parties. That's why we tabled draft legislation on Friday, so that MPs from other parties would have a chance to see what we are proposing. And we are having energetic conversations with other parties about these measures. And really, the point that we're making is this is the right thing for Canadians right now. It's the right thing for the Canadian economy right now. And we would love to see all MPs supporting these measures.
But my question is, how can you table legislation with the Parliament seized? Because you're not giving up the evidence for the not NC Lavalin, the green slush fund that you guys, that the RCMP was asking for. So how's this going to go through? I don't know, but the NDP did say that they are willing to vote for the GST tax credit, but not the $250 one until people with disabilities and old age people can get it.
All right, thank you. Najoud Al-Malise, Canadian Press, please.
Hi, Minister Freeland. So following up on Bill's question, I'm wondering how you see this measure on GST being fair, given that you'll be on the hook to compensate provinces with an HST, but in other provinces that have their own separate sales tax, Canadians will only get a 5% break instead of 15% elsewhere.
So thanks for the question, Najoud. And with real respect, I disagree with the premise. This is an opportunity for all premiers across the country to step up and to join the federal government in providing this relief for their citizens. We've been having conversations with premiers across the country, and we very much hope that that will be the attitude that they take. And I think, I've been talking to RMPs from across the country, and certainly what RMPs are hearing from their constituents is that they really welcome this. Their constituents were happy to hear this announcement. And I think that Canadians across the country would benefit from getting this support, no matter where they live.
Criticism from economists to the GST measure and the checks, arguing that it's bad economic policy, it's not targeted, not a good use of the government's fiscal power. What's your response to the criticism from economists giving an economic argument in favor of these measures?
I would say that we need to distinguish between structural and temporary measures. This is a temporary measure which acknowledges that despite all of the wonderful economic news that my colleagues economists are correct to spread, the average Canadian doesn't yet feel that good news. So yes, falling interest rates, yes, low inflation, yes, rising job numbers, this is all very true, and it will become even more tangible and real in 2025 when economic growth is even more superior, and we, according to the IMF, have the fastest growing economy of all G7 countries. But as of now, when we speak to Canadians and to Quebecers in particular, they don't feel that yet. So this is a temporary, limited measure that is going to support Canadians at a period of the year in which the pressures on pockets and family finances, those pressures are very hard and very, very strong. Now, I mentioned earlier there are structural measures that we have put into place and will keep putting into place. And these structural measures, yes, are more targeted and by definition permanent. And for instance, the Canadian Dental Care Plan is a more targeted measure with family income lower than $90,000. It's there to stay, and it's therefore defined in a manner which is a bit more adapted to a long-term measure than the short-term measure that we need to put into place for Christmas time. And never mind the Canada Child Benefit and the important investments in housing, the school food program. All of these measures come with long-term structural impacts on the economy and on personal finances. These measures are limited and very temporary.
And I'm going to add one thing. Oh, en français, allez-y.
Yes, but it doesn't target the actual problem, your spending problem. And I don't think the Liberals really get that, is they have a spending problem. And inflation is down, they don't understand why. Or they do understand why, is because we're in a recession. But they say everything is all good, all dandy. But then we have 2 million people going to food banks in Canada who've never gone there before. We have homeless everywhere. Don't believe your lying eyes, guys. It's all good. It's all fine.
Positive news that the numbers are showing about the Canadian economy and what people are feeling. He talked about how Canadians are feeling. And that's a really important economic point. A lot of economists have been talking about the vibe session and the fact that Canadians just aren't feeling good, and that is having real economic consequences. And the Canadian economists making that point are right, that there is a disconnect between the really positive economic news, the fact that the Canadian economy does appear set for a soft landing. That's good news, but Canadians aren't feeling it, and that is shaping their economic behavior in ways that are not great for the Canadian economy. People have been talking about a vibe session and how that is a challenge.
Nobody's talking about a vibe session. No one TikToker used that, and now it's a thing for the Liberal Party. Maybe somebody of your age and position should actually use real words
for the Canadian economy. One of the positive impacts of this measure is to help Canadians get past that vibe session, because how Canadians feel really does have a real economic impact. And I'd like to mention two numbers. After the Prime Minister's announcement on Thursday, BMO upgraded their economic forecast for the Canadian economy for the first quarter from 1.7 to 2.5. And on Friday, the Toronto Stock Exchange hit an all-time high. The Toronto Stock Exchange now has a higher market cap than the FTSE, than the Paris Bourse, or than the German DAX. So there are some good underlying economic developments, economic indicators. It's really important for Canadians to start feeling that confidence and to act on that confidence.
And I just wanted to add 2 points from the perspective of.
So the interesting thing to think of, I'm not a stocks person or anything, but remember during the Great Cold when everybody was locked down and everybody was flush for funds at like the start of it? Remember what happened to stocks and like Bitcoin? They skyrocketed. So nobody had jobs, everybody was locked down, yet stocks skyrocketed. So couldn't that possibly be what's happening right now? Something weird's happening in our stock market where there's a ton of people who, right, are struggling, especially during these Christmas times, but for some reason our market's not showing it. Shouldn't that be concerning? But the people up top, right, they don't acknowledge that, well, they might acknowledge that people are hurting, but to be completely honest, this GST tax write-off isn't going to help, say, Albertans too much because we don't pay PST. So it's only going to take off 5% tax on what we already pay. And that's, like, granted, it's nice not to pay that, but that's maybe, like, what, $5 off of a $100 purchase? Great. What am I going to do with that $5 that I'm saving right there? Just saying. Now for a place like Ontario, if they take off the whole HST, that's a whole different ballgame. But who knows if that's actually going to happen.
One of the rationale the minister just gave, a number of economists are quite upset with his policies. Part of the rationale, it seems, is that it's very temporary. It's going to be for a short period of time. So does that mean past February 15th, your government has no plans to extend any of these programs you're announcing today?
That's right.
On the Vibe session idea that you were just talking about, is a part of the rationale for why you're sending 19 million people checks to improve their vibes economically so they're feeling better about themselves and about the economy? Is that part of the rationale you're saying why you're sending all this money out?
Oh, I love it. I love it. This guy's awesome.
I was specifically referring to the
TikToker who
the
said
Canadian
it.
economy right now over the holiday period is in a place where demand is weak, consumer demand is weak, and there's excess supply and excess capacity. And so one of the benefits of this measure is to give Canadians a little more support, a little more help, and to, with that added confidence to support our small businesses and to support demand in this very specific period. So that's what I was specifically referring to.
So the checks have nothing.
You could take the carbon tax off, or you could promise not to increase the carbon tax in April, plus do this GST thing, and I think people would appreciate you a lot more than giving out a $250 gift card and 2 months off of GST, and then next April you go, okay, well, the carbon tax is increasing again. Hopefully you don't want to crank the AC up too much, and that's or turn the heat on during winter.
There's a disconnect there between kind of what you're saying.
I was referring to the specific impact on consumer demand of the GST rebate. And that's why I referred to the BMO upgrading of their forecast for Q1, which was very much about what they see happening over the holiday period and having some consumer demand, as Rechi was saying, carry through into January. We heard already from Restaurants Canada that they see this as having a meaningful impact on people's willingness to go out over the holiday period. That's a good thing.
Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News.
Thanks very much. Hi, Minister.
I don't think this is going to make any impact on people going out, but you're going to see a lot more people going out because every company is having their Christmas party. People are gathering for the holidays, right? So the Liberals are going to say, look at this GST tax write-off thing. Like, look at the amount people are buying. Look at the people going out to restaurants. It's crazy. It's like, yeah, it's the holidays, right? And in January, yeah, it's the pre-New Year's parties and post-New Year's parties. I mean,
Freeland, your defense counterpart this morning, speaking at a conference, suggested that Canada is ready to move up the reaching 2% of GDP timeline to meet NATO requirements. I'm wondering if you can tell us what is a possible new timeline, and is this because you are worried about the pressure from the incoming U.S. administration?
The Prime Minister made a very clear commitment that Canada will reach 2% by 2032. That is a clear, important commitment, and it is a major increase in defense spending from 0.9%, where defense spending was when we formed government and took over from the Conservatives. That is a really, really big step up. I think what we have to focus on as a country is, as we move towards higher defense spending, being sure that that higher defense spending works to support our economy. Other countries that spend at 2% on defense have well-developed military industrial strategies. They work hard to ensure that their defense spending is complementary to economic policy. That's not something that Canada has a lot of recent experience with. We did during the Second World War, but not recently. And as we step up our defense spending, we have to be sure that, yes, it is about supporting our military in these times of real global challenge, that it is about being a good ally to our allies around the world, but also that our defense spending is married to our economic policy in a way that countries that have high defense spending already accomplish. So that's work that we are doing now, and that's something that Canada needs to get serious about.
Okay. And
yes, let's just hope that nothing serious in the world's goes on between now and the 7 years we're going to need to get our spending under control. Russia, Ukraine, or any countries become sort of hostile towards us, North Korea and China. But, you know, I'm sure we'll be fine. We have 7 years to figure it out. It'll be all good. We'll totally be ready. We could just ask everybody to hold off on doing anything dramatic until Canada's ready. I think that'll work. That sounds like a good plan. Good plan. We will want to, you know, expedite that because of things going on in the world. We wouldn't want to really focus on defense spending being a priority. Just saying.
Maybe you've done that already. Perhaps I would point to this morning's announcement on the strategic partnership with L3 Harris, which is an example of something that is going to enhance the capability of Canada to support defense needs across Canada. In the case of the L3 Harris announcement this morning, it's about sustaining the new F-35 that we'll be acquiring over the years to come, and possibly to have a regional depot for the maintenance of these aircrafts, which would be of great significance and great value to our American partners.
And I'm actually going to add more thing, because Jean-Yves and I talk about this particular issue a lot. So let me just add the Icebreaker Pact between Canada, the United States, and Finland is another good example of the new way that Canada needs to be thinking and working and collaborating with our allies. We believe as a government, and I think this is actually a view that is broadly held in Canada, that now is a time that we need to step up our presence in the Arctic. We are seeing an extremely aggressive Russia. We're seeing a China that is wanting to position itself also as an Arctic power. We are an Arctic nation. We do need to step up our presence there. The Icebreaker Pact is a really good example of one way to do that, collaborating with our allies, supporting our industry. And it's, we've been having some conversations with people who are close to the incoming Trump administration. And one thing that people have pointed out to me is that Icebreaker Pact, that idea of working together to build icebreakers, we actually started working on with the U.S. during the first Trump administration.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, it's too bad you couldn't be with that nuclear-powered submarine pact that went on between the United States, UK, and Australia, because we had a bunch of MPs who were giving information over to other countries, and because we weren't spending anything on our military, so the other countries wouldn't get anything out of it themselves. So, I mean, it would have been nice to have some nuclear-powered submarines, but Canada kind of dropped the ball on that one. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about these icebreakers. That's pretty good. That's pretty good too.
For that, and I'm not quite sure I heard an answer to what Bill Blair meant when he said accelerated timeline, but I gotta move on. So today the Prime Minister told NATO parliamentarians they can't let fears and anxieties about affordability get in the way of meeting these spending requirements for NATO. But wasn't Canada doing exactly that when you announced billions in GST relief just last week at a time when you are under fire from allies like the US to meet your spending requirements faster for NATO?
I would say the opposite, actually. The way for us to be a good partner to our NATO allies, the way for us to sustain our support for Ukraine, which has recently recently gone past 1,000 days of fighting for its independence, of fighting for its democracy. The way we sustain that support is that we ensure that Canadians here in Canada are feeling supported, are feeling they have access to opportunity, are feeling they can afford the things they need, and they can save for the things they want. Countries whose citizens, whose people feel economically secure, feel economically supported by their own governments, those are countries that can muster the political capacity to be strong players in the world. So, in my view, being sure that we meet the moment, we support Canadians with their affordability challenge is absolutely connected to, in a really positive way, Canada being able to stand tall and strong and proud and be a force for democracy, for security in the world.
Brian Platt.
And I think we'll cut her there, folks, because she just said it all right there, that to support other countries during their times of need, Canada and Canadians need to feel like they're prosperous and they can buy what they need to buy, and then that they can make it through anything. How many people watching this feel like they're really prospering right now? How many people really feel like food's affordable, you can have like nice Christmases, and just everything is going awesome, and yeah, we have enough money to send to Ukraine to help them out as well. Does anybody feel that way? Because when I look at the amount of people going to food banks, when I look at the increasing homeless camps on the streets, and all the failures and corruption in our liberal government, I say we do not have that. And I don't see Canada going in the greatest direction, and I don't see us having the money, because we just saw it on the last video I posted. We're over $1 trillion in debt, and our government saying everything's good, everything's okay. Every country's in debt, it's fine. And every person apparently now owes $200,000 to who knows who, and we pay how much in taxes. And now the government thinks, what we're going to do to solve all of this is to bring in a temporary tax relief. And then in April, increase the carbon tax again. And then we're going to put a carbon cap in to further cut our oil and gas capacity, which is one of our biggest economic drivers. So that's going to hurt more jobs and kill more jobs and kill more projects. And then Donald Trump's going to get in, and the Liberals won't have a plan for that, and do not seem to have a plan for that. So things are not coming up Canada in the next until October, when we finally get the Conservatives in. Then we can get the ball rolling. But let me know what you think down below. Am I right about this, or am I just ranting about random things on the internet? Other than that, if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. I'm looking for 500 subscribers by the end of December. That would be awesome. And with no further ado, have a great day.